Turnstiles.
Oh, do you know what?
Oh, we're live. Are we live? No
Are
way.
Are we live?
I guess we are live. I'm not sure how much of that conversation in the green room was heard, but basically, Jess and I were telling Lucy that tomorrow, when she's at the Emirates, she's got to sing her heart out, as does every single fan. I've got to say, the fans have been so impressive so far this season. Welcome back to Ladies' Night In on the Lee Judges TV channel. Welcome back, Jess from She Knows Arsenal. Bonjour.
Thank you for having me back.
Of course. And also welcome back, Luce the Gooner. Welcome back, Luce. Smashing it.
Thank you.
On the Highbury squad and the Lee Judges channel. Yes. Awesome. All right. It's the night before the North London derby, when all was calm and the hopes and dreams of every Arsenal fan were... Can't rhyme anything after that, but it's the North London derby eve. No way. Start with you, Jess. Just in a 30-second nutshell, how are you feeling this North London derby eve?
Nervous, but weirdly confident. I just feel, I don't even want to say this out loud. I just feel like we should win it. I think we're better than them at the moment. So nervous, but confident. So we'll see what happens.
Luce, how about you? How you feeling? How you doing?
Stressed. Always stressed. It's just I feel like tomorrow is such a big game for us confidence wise. I hope the players know that. I hope it's been reiterated to them how important this is and how mentally it's going to affect the entire atmosphere. And if we don't go out there and really bring some brutality and some ruthlessness, I feel like it's going to end very badly for the critics side of things, like how it's going to pan out for the players and Arteta. But we shall see. Yeah,
interesting because, you mentioned you hope the players are ready for it. And we do have new players that have not played in a North London derby before. And it's really funny because we had Gary Stevens, the former Tottenham defender, on our show yesterday with Super Kev. And a mate of his was a Spurs fan. And when he signed for Tottenham in the 80s, his mate said to him, "Are you ready for this?" And Gary's like, "What do I have to be ready for? I played for Brighton. I've played in derbies against Southampton." And his mate's like, "No, Gary, are you ready for this?" And then when he played in his first North London derby, he called his friend and he was like, "Oh, yeah, okay, now I know what you mean." It's a totally different ball game. And I think as much as some people think the North London derby may have diminished because of our lack of prowess in the Premier League, I don't think you can diminish the game itself, because people mistake Arsenal Football Club being a small club for being a poor Premier League at the moment. We're still a big club. Tottenham have risen above us in the league. If anything, it's bigger and more important than ever that we win this game. So let's start at the very tippy top of the North London derby mountain, shall we? They're regressing, we're progressing. So Jess, I'm going to start with you. The $64 million question, let's just get the elephant out of the room right off the bat, shall we? Every single Arsenal fan has two things that they want to make sure doesn't happen tomorrow. Most, I will say, is no Xhaka, and please start Ramsdale over Leno. Now, I have seen some Arsenal fans, including my cousin, who sent me a little voice note saying, "I think you're wrong to say Xhaka shouldn't start, and I don't like Xhaka." Explain that to me and which side of the fence you're on. Xhaka in, Xhaka out, Leno in, Leno out.
Well, let's start with the easy one. Leno out. I've been Leno out for a very long time. I think great shot stopper. We don't have to go over his qualities again, but Ramsdale fits what we need, in terms of playing the ball out of the back. And the one thing I do want to say is I don't think we've spoken about it since the last time that I came on, but it feels nice to know that I was on the side of Ramsdale when he signed, because so many people neglected to do any research whatsoever on the goalkeeper and decided that because he had been relegated a couple times, that meant that he was crap. And I think he's shown in the last couple of games that he played that he has presence. He's good off of his line. He's great with his feet, and he's the right mentality that we need. Leno, great goalkeeper, but I think it's time to turn the page. So I'm perfectly happy with him sitting this one out. in regards to Xhaka, overall, I am Xhaka out. I wanted him to go this past summer, but ultimately, when you look at your players and you see what the strengths and weaknesses of them are, I do think that although Sambi has played well, although Odegaard has played well, I still feel like our best midfield includes Granit and Partey together. And with Partey struggling with injury, the last thing we want to do is put him in a midfield basically alone with Odegaard and ESR in this game, and they decide to play Dele Alli, Højbjerg, and Ndombele. It'd be different if it was Oliver Skip and Harry Winks. I don't think they're going to go that way. I think they're going to go with a stronger midfield. So with Partey being not 100%, I'm not sure that that's the midfield that I would go with. I wouldn't be upset if Xhaka started this game. And that probably sounds weird because ultimately I'm Granit out. But in a double pivot, in a really important game against a decent midfield, not Burnley, not Norwich, a decent midfield, I think we're going to need our best pivot. And that right now includes Granit.
Luce, I know you've been really vocal about Xhaka, and you've been to the last few home games as well. What makes you believe that Sambi is a better choice at this point? You mentioned before we came on, he played the 90 minutes, so it might be that he doesn't start. But why are you veering towards that partnership at this point?
Just to start with the Xhaka point itself, not only leaving out this side that he's a massive liability, he lacks discipline, he has errors in him. Virtually every big game we see him cause problems. That aside, I was saying to you guys before the show, what sort of a message does it send to the rest of the players if a guy can make such bad errors, make such bad decisions, throw in some of these absolutely atrocious fouls in some of the most diabolical times, and then he just comes back, gets straight in the team when we've won our last 2 games? What does that say to some of these youngsters that we're trying to build a team around, which we've got one of the youngest squads in the Premier League, I believe. So that would be a huge issue for me if that is the standard that you're setting. So that in itself is I just don't think it would warrant him coming back. Not only that, but Lokonga doesn't deserve to be dropped. In my opinion, he hasn't made any bad mistakes. He hasn't looked weak. He's been strong going forward. I just think give the guy a chance to show what he can do. Give the guy a chance to show what he can do in one of the bigger games as well. Let the guy sort of prove himself, because we can't keep relying on Xhaka when he's got all of these errors in him, when he's clearly got an issue with discipline, and he can continuously bounce back from these huge sort of discrepancies that other players wouldn't really come back from.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And when you kind of listen to a lot of the rhetoric / interviews from Edu and Arteta of late, it's always been about we're building around young players. And one of the things I think that Arteta's made a mistake of, and I'll swing back to you, Jess, is that last season when Pepe had 2 or 3 really good games under his belt, and he's a form player, right? He's a player that needs to just keep rolling, keep playing. He benched him. We've seen him do that previously, and I think I agree with Lucy in the sense that it sends a wrong message to that particular player, the team, and the fan base as well. Plus, Xhaka had COVID. He had been in Switzerland for a while. He hasn't really trained. He's not really played for a month. So is there a possibility, Jess, that you can see that maybe he'll start with that partnership with Partey, Sambi, maybe Emo in front of them? What's your take on Xhaka maybe starting on the bench? Do you think Arteta is willing to do that?
Well, up until this point, Arteta has had opportunities to play Thomas and Lokonga together, and he's neglected to do so. He's played Odegaard in the double pivot instead of Lokonga several times. So for me, that sends a message for me. Not only that, I think, didn't Sambi play the whole entire game against AFC Wimbledon? So I think there's some pretty clear signs that maybe there's an opportunity for Granit to come back in. I also think that in some of those interviews, I think Edu made it quite clear that the pivot that they're moving towards and the one that they rely upon is Granit and Thomas. I think he said that really clearly. And the reason why they brought in Lakanga is as a young player to learn under them. So that's why I always think, like, even though I would love to see Sambi and Thomas play together, even though I'd love to see maybe Odegaard and ESR in a certain match with Partey, I think ultimately the club is building around those two, at least in the short term, to play in that pivot. So again, I wouldn't be surprised if Xhaka started. I think the biggest reason why he wouldn't is fitness. I don't think there's a reason in Arteta's mind about discipline, the fact that he's error prone. None of those things have stopped Arteta from relying upon this guy and basically building his midfield around him. So if there's any reason why he wouldn't start him tomorrow, it'd be just he's not fit. But if he even thinks that he can play him for 60 minutes, I still think he would do it, and that's something that, depending on what side of the fence you're on, you may look at Arteta and be like, wow, I hate that, but that's just how he is,
It's true. And he doubled down as well, didn't he? Luce, he just,
sorry
before
to interrupt.
you jump in. He doubled down and said in a presser, he's the epitome of what an Arsenal player should be, and he's a leader, etc., etc. So he doubled down on all of that, Luce. Go on.
I just think, obviously, it's a ifs and buts, whatever. But if he does start Xhaka, with all the controversy surrounding him in a game as big as this, and we lose, it's going to be the nail in his coffin.
Mm-hmm.
And is his ego big enough? Is he that confident in this player who time and time again has let him down, that he's put so much trust in? Would he start him again with the fitness situation, with the COVID situation, not playing, the red card? Like, would he really put his neck on the line like that when he has Lokonga? And I mean, we haven't really spoken about Maitland-Niles either, because he's trying to integrate him into the team more. Could that be a possibility?
I can't see, and I'll swing back to Jess. I can't see him starting in this game, but I can see him being an option in this game. I think he'll definitely be on the bench. But right now, I don't know about second guessing Arteta and what he's going to do. When you look at the results today, there is a massive opportunity for us to get 3 points and climb up that table, beat our fiercest rivals. Chelsea, negative result today. Liverpool, negative, even though they drew. They were expecting to win that game. You saw Manchester United completely blow it, which was so pleasurable, by the way. Can we just take a minute to appreciate Bruno missing a penalty? Let's just take a minute to just ponder on that. Yeah. Wonderful stuff.
The whole situation, lovely.
But so I think that there's a great opportunity to take advantage of the situation, and a lot of the times we've failed to do that when we've had those opportunities in the past. So the midfield for me is critical. I think that back four set now, Jess, and the goalkeeper, that midfield is critical. Tell me what your biggest fear is about their midfield versus our midfield, and why.
It's not that I don't really rate their midfield very highly. I just feel I don't think our midfield is that great either. I think we're missing a midfielder, next to Thomas, that would really make us unbeatable with that pivot. But if they play in Ndombele, Dele Alli, and Højbjerg, I think that's a pretty decent midfield for us to have to compete with. And so having somebody like Ndombele on the ball gives them a little bit more creativity, which is what they're missing, and would free up Harry Kane. What you want is Harry Kane basically dropping into a CDM role, trying to pick up the ball and create for everybody else. With Ndombele there, you have something a little bit different. I know that they don't really trust him that much, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him in a North London derby, because they know they need something there and somebody for Thomas Partey to have to watch. If you make Thomas have to defend, which if we play the way that a lot of people want us to play with ESR and Odegaard, he will be defending Ndombele, which will stop him from being influential for us. So those are kind of my fears a little bit. You know what I mean? Because Odegaard's not really a defensive presence. Neither is ESR. We've seen that those two can get ran over in midfield against better midfield. So that's kind of why I'm like, maybe bring Xhaka in. but
why?
he has
because
his
Jess,
own
do you
issues
feel like
too.
do you feel like we have to slow it down versus speed it up? Because we've talked a lot about speed versus snail trail type playing, right? When Xhaka's in, it's sideways, backwards. There's no speed going through the midfield, but also Arteta loves playing, especially through Tierney on that left side. Can you talk me through that a little bit?
This is why it was criminal for us not to get a CDM in the summer. Because if you have a CDM there that can watch Ndombele and watch Dele Alli, then you can allow Thomas to do what he does best, which is speed up play. That is what he does. He gets the ball, he bypasses the other team's midfield, and gets us into the next phase of play. When you don't have anybody else, you're basically making a decision between having Granit Xhaka or Sambi Lokonga do that job for you, which, depending on the level of competition, both of them could be a liability doing that. Or using Thomas to do that and losing the ability to play the ball quickly through midfield. Ainsley doesn't have that in his locker either. So we just don't really have the pieces. So that's why I really wanted us to bring that player in. We don't have it. So when I look at it, I'm like, okay, would I rather Xhaka be in there, somebody a little bit more experienced, or Sambi? I'm not sure. It's a toss-up for me. So it's confusing.
I know it is a little bit. Lucy, there's a big difference between playing Wimbledon, right, and playing a Premier League team. And I know that Sambi impressed. I know Nuno impressed, but we know that Nuno's not going to start, this game. When you were there and you saw that against Wimbledon, how did you feel about our speed of play through the midfield? With the partnerships that were formed in that particular match? Because for me, I always feel like we're so reliant on passing everything through Tierney at times that we become so one-dimensional and so obvious. I think Martin Odegaard now offers something so much more in this squad and gives us a little bit of an X factor that we haven't really had since maybe the good old Santi Ozil days. So talk me through what you saw, and then we'll switch gears and move over to the defence in just a little bit here in terms of what you saw against Wimbledon.
Well, the thing I liked that going forward against Wimbledon wasn't the quality, because obviously, like you said, no discredit to them, but we were playing Wimbledon. It's not the same as playing in the Premier League. It was the fact that we were playing as more of a unit that impressed me. We looked more put together. There was more of a game plan going forward. It was pressing forward together, not like disjointed like we normally are. And I feel like that's another thing that Tavares really offered. Like, he was pushing up that left-hand side and getting people to go with him. It wasn't just lack of movement in the middle like we're used to seeing, and the people looked like they wanted to be there. The issue with Tierney is he tries to do so much, I feel like, and he gets so frustrated when people aren't cooperating or it's not sort of clicking with him. And obviously where he does so much, he picks up these injuries. He gets annoyed. He's putting in crosses that aren't really finding anyone. You can sort of see it in his play style, which isn't a bad thing. I appreciate that he's got passion for the club. He wants to do well, but sometimes you just need to sort of take a step back and just sort of gather yourself as a player, as an individual, and as well as taking your team along with you, like show them the way, sort of. I think he's got leadership qualities. He just needs to be built on. He just needs a little bit more experience. Yeah.
Also, it's really hard when you're putting the ball we probably put in 1,577 crosses last season, and there's no target man. I mean,
Tierney creates like at least 4 chances a game for us, high quality chances. He's our best chance creator. So I want to be very careful about watching Nuno and seeing that he's a different sort of player and Tierney's a little bit out of form, and using that as because for me, Nuno, he has clear issues defensively, and I haven't really seen him do a lot of. He doesn't have the right decision making on the ball at the moment for me. So I think it's just a little bit early for that. In the next couple of games after this one, I think we have Brighton, and I think Crystal Palace comes up. Maybe you want to put him in those games and see how he fares there. But Tierney is still our best left back, and I think he has enough credit in the bank, you know what I mean, over the last year or so to let us ride this through with him. But Nuno is a great prospect, though. Yeah.
The thing we got to be careful of, and I've said this, and by the way, I think Nuno might be more of a left-sided midfielder than a left back.
I think he's a wing back.
Wing back.
Yeah.
Probably. But let's be honest about something here. We're very protective of our players that become, fan favorites. And there's no doubt that Kieran Tierney's come into an Arsenal team that was kind of on its knees when it came to showing, some fight, some tenacity, some character, and instantly became a favorite because of his personality and also just because he's a really, really good player. But I don't want to mollycoddle him. I don't want to mollycoddle Saka. Saka's been poor. Tierney's been poor. Emile Smith-Rowe has been poor. And we've got to call it as we see it. One of the things I was saying on our show last week was I really don't want Saka to become this mollycoddled unicorn mascot for England, right? He's a man and he's the future of Arsenal Football Club. And if we're not careful, when he goes off to England and he hangs out with Jack Grealish and Harry Maguire and Sterling and all these players, heads turn really quickly. Grealish talked about how he and Carl Walker had conversations about Manchester City. So if we don't surround these players, and you're right, Jess, to say we need a CDM, we have to be really careful. But at the same time, they're not immune to criticism. And I don't want to go hard on them, but at the same time, if you're not in form, you shouldn't play. We've been through that process before at the Arsenal, haven't we? Where the name on the back of your shirt just immediately means that you start, and that was more under Wenger than Emery and Arteta. So with that said, Tierney does deserve to start and he deserves another chance, but he's a bit out of form. He's not been great.
He is. I just feel like we have to look at the games that Nuno has played in. What have we actually seen? He's a very exciting player because he runs fast, he's athletic. But we saw him take the ball, dribble a couple of players, and shoot from halfway against Burnley. He doesn't have the decision-making qualities yet that I would be comfortable with him playing in the North London derby. I would not drop Tierney. Defensively, if Spurs put us under pressure, who would you prefer to be defending Son or Kane on that side? Do you want Nuno Tavares doing that, or do you want Tierney doing that?
No, of course. I agree with that.
I think the next couple of games after that might be a better place to have Nuno kind of step in. I'm not saying I'd
start Tierney against Spurs. I'm just saying, if this form continues for these guys, they're not immune to the criticism and being dropped and stuff like that. Right, let's shift gears a little bit. You guys have tuned in here to Ladies Late Night. You're listening to the North London Derby Eve show with myself, Sophie, Jess from She Knows Arsenal, and Luce, the Gooner, who appears on the Highbury Squad and also on this channel as well. Thanks to everyone who is joining us tonight. Let's talk about our defence, because I think there's a lot to be excited about in terms of Tomiyasu and Gabriel. And I think Tierney's going to put his heart and soul into this game. Ramsdale, Rambo 2.0, is proving to, insert himself into this defence. I'll start with you, Luce. Do you think Ben White is coming into this game under the most pressure of any other Arsenal player?
Absolutely. The last time I watched him play, he was atrocious, and not even a case of like physically, he's very much capable of holding up a ball. I have no issues with that. I have no issues with the way he presses back, the way he recovers his position. That's fine. It's just his football brain. He needs to be faster at decision making, not so slapdash, and his passing accuracy needs to improve. Luckily enough, we have Ramsdale, who's passing out from the back is so much better than Lino's. So thankfully, otherwise we would have been in even more trouble. But I feel like, again, when players are playing bad, they deserve criticism. And I'm not here to mollycoddle and say, oh, he's new to the club, like whatever. No, you've got your Premier League proven. Okay, we've bought you for a reason to do your job. Stop trying to do more than you're capable of and just defend.
Yeah, I think that here's the scoop. Harry Maguire, Jess, when he first went to Man United, 85 million price tag. Lucy, John Stones, the same when he left Everton to go to Manchester City. Unfortunately for Ben White, that is the price point for an up-and-coming potential British star who also could have England credentials. So the 50 million price tag, a little bit like Pepe, it's not the player's fault, but it does come with an insurmountable amount of pressure. We saw Harry Maguire fumble at United. He became a meme. He became a joke for a long time, and he found his feet last season, no doubt. I think playing with better players in the England squad has helped him too. John Stones was out of the City team for a while, has come back, was really instrumental last season in their in winning the Premier League. So with Ben White, Jess, what do you see? Do you agree that he's under an intense amount of pressure? Gabriel really bailed him out, but has that criticism been a little bit unfair considering all these things that I've mentioned, or is there no time to spare when it comes to playing at the back for the Arsenal?
Yeah, I mean, the first time I watched the game, or like when I was watching the game live against the Burnley game, I thought to myself, not great. Just go ahead and pass the ball, get it out quicker. Obviously, I believe there's something wrong with the grass. Is that an excuse? No, but you have to adapt. There's definitely something wrong. That grass was dry, and you have to adapt. And a lot of our passes were short. It was weird. You could tell that our play, like passing overall, was bad. But when I rewatched the game, I thought defensively he was okay. He got all of his aerial duels. He got stuck in, but I think he's a pretty boy defender in the end of the day. I really don't think he's that guy that's going to be, he's not a Ruben Diaz, he's not a Gabriel. He's going to be pretty on the ball, make nice long passes, pass between the lines, look nice on the ball. So he might have a little bit of adjustment, coming his way, playing for the Arsenal. Like, we don't get calls, you're going to get slammed around, you need to buck up. So I agree with Lucy in that way, where it's like, he does need to step up, and you're Premier League proven and you need to kind of get with the program. But I do think some of the criticism for me is just a little bit much if I would say, I feel like everybody deserves adaptation regardless to whether you're 50 million or 5 million. I still think you need to adapt to the way of play, being at a completely different level of club. I'm sorry, playing for Brighton and playing for Leeds is nothing like playing for Arsenal. It's just not. It's a completely different game. And he's our star signing. So for me, I want to give him at least 10 games. He did contract COVID or something like that, needs to get back into the swing of things, play with the guys around him. And if we get to 10 games and he's still giving Ramsdale hospital balls and stuff like that, then we're like, what's happening here? But ultimately,
True.
I think he's going to be fine. Like, I'm not really worried about him. And I really don't want to give him the Pepe treatment, because I feel like that's not really the energy that we need to be portraying for these players. It's already enough playing for Arsenal,
I know, I agree with that. And you know what? I think part of the problem with Ben White is that he's up against this Saliba narrative, Luce. And that is a huge, huge problem. A lot of Arsenal fans...
When I think of Ben White, I don't even think, when you asked me that, I didn't even think price tag, to be honest. I just want to see a guy out there playing well and using every bit of concentration you have while you're on the pitch to do your job. That's all I'm interested in. Like, this whole thing with Pepe, I see a guy who's putting in a shift, he's putting in a work rate, he's creating chances. 72, people say, but 72 million, it is what it is. He didn't pick his price. He goes out there every week, and I feel like he gives his all. Sometimes he's got errors in him, but what player on that pitch doesn't have errors in them? Like, realistically, this is the team we have. We need to get behind them.
Yeah, you know what it is too with Pepe? He's not as easy on the eye, but if you look at his data, his analytics, he actually creates a lot more and does a lot more than fans think. And I know, that he'll go missing in a game, but for example, the Norwich game, wasn't having a great game, but he's the reason why we were able to get that goal. And we've seen him do that often. Yet when we did our starting 11, and Kevin had his starting 11, he didn't have Pepe in the team.
See, here's the thing, Sophie. So this is my pushback.
Okay.
I did a whole show on the attack yesterday, and because a lot of people feel like I have an agenda against Pepe, and I don't. I love Pepe. My issue is that I think we have this thing where, because he creates these chances and he looks busy and, he's probably our most dangerous attacker, that we give him a lot of, basically, for me, I don't think it's fair to take Saka out of his best position to fit Pepe in, because I think Saka is more important to the team than Pepe. because although the goal for Norwich doesn't happen if Pepe is not there, it also doesn't happen if Bukayo Saka is not there either. And the Odegaard goal doesn't happen without Saka either.
Well, yeah, Saka
Most of
got
our goals
fouled
don't
for that
happen
goal,
if
didn't
Saka.
he?
Even the goals at Wimbledon. I mean, Lucy, I think you were there. Both goals once he came in, they kind of happened because he was there. So for me,
absolutely, he looked amazing on that right hand side.
Look at Saka's form since he's been on the left hand side. I don't think that you can look at it and probably say, well, maybe it's because he's being shoehorned into another position. Pepe, if he's going to be taking Saka out of his position, I'm going to need him to be more clinical when he gets into those positions, because I just think Saka's better than him at this point. So for me, it's a little bit like, it's not hate on Pepe, but when I look at like, who do I want more in those positions? I prefer Saka because I know goals just don't happen for this team without him. It just doesn't, you know?
So let me ask you this, guys. Would you rather see Saka on the right, Pepe on the left, Oba down the middle, or would you prefer to see a Saka on the right, Oba, Pepe on the left, and Oba or Laka down the middle? What does your front three, regardless of who we're playing, tomorrow we're playing Tottenham, what does that front three, we've shifted from, I want to go back to the defence because I have a couple more questions, but now we're on this subject. What does that front three look like then against this particular Tottenham team for you, Luce?
For me, I think I agree with like the benefits of having Saka on that right hand side against this Tottenham side. The thing is, the only thing that worries me with Saka is sometimes his decision making isn't necessarily up to standard, but he's young. Again, it comes with inexperience. I don't want the stress to get the best of him like it did last season, obviously with England. I don't want to put all this pressure on this one kid, because let's be real, like he's 19, 20 years old. And it's Pepe, he should be showing him the way. In a way, we should be saying that Pepe is our first choice, and Saka's going to come on and be the super sub. That's in my opinion. But I just think going forward, whether it's a choice between Aubameyang or Lacazette down the front, I would go with Lacazette against Tottenham just because of his hold-up ability. And then I would go with Saka on the right and Pepe on the left. Whether or not that will ever happen, I don't know. But
yeah, I can't see a situation where Arteta drops Aubameyang for this game, Jess. I know we've talked about it a lot. A lot of people have talked about Aubameyang this week. Kev says as well, you got to play your best players. So for him, Laka and Oba have to start. Lacazette loves a game against Tottenham. Aubameyang scored a couple, against them. That 4-2 that I bring up a lot. The two of them created goals out of nothing. And then you had that iconic Lucas Torreira moment. But when you're looking at a very weak Tottenham defence right now, to be honest with you, and a goalkeeper who does have mistakes in him, for me, I'm starting Lacazette and I'm starting Aubameyang. And it's all about, I would maybe take a risk and put Saka on the right and have Pepe on the bench and give him the opportunity to come on as a super sub. What would you do if you had the keys to the kingdom?
Well, I don't know. I saw some of that Wimbledon game and I thought Lacazette was blowing. I do. I thought that he looks like somebody who hasn't played in a long time, so I'm not sure he's up to fitness. I mean, I love Lacazette, but I think Aubameyang has worked hard enough in these last couple of games, in my opinion, to keep his spot as center forward. And I think I would drop Pepe, not because he hasn't played well, but because I think we have the best balance with Odegaard and Smith Rowe and Saka behind Aubameyang. I think that's our best front four. It lacks goals, and that's really the true issue here, is that we have 4 positions and we need 5 players out there at the same time. We kind of need Pepe, Saka, ESR, Odegaard, and Aubameyang, don't we? But we only have 4 positions, so you have to figure out who's missing, and if you take one of them out, you're missing something. So for me, I'd rather bring in Pepe off of the bench. I think, didn't he come off of the bench the last North London derby? And he contributed to the goal that Lacazette
he created a few problems,
right.
Yeah.
I would kind of go with that again. I think I would go with that again. But that's just me, because I feel like Saka needs to play on the right, Yeah. I feel like he will cook Reguilon. I think that guy is horrible. I think he will cook him.
He's not been great, has he? He's not been great. We can really exploit them, and I think it's like more critical than ever. This is our first really big test of the season, you guys. this is it. I mean, we played Norwich, we've played Burnley, we played now you look at the Brentford result today against Liverpool and you say to yourself, well, they've got that Wolves factor, that Sheffield United factor when those two teams first came up in the Premier League and had all of the vibes and the, and the excitement of becoming a Premier League team. And it's so important that he gets that front line right. But the good news is that we're going to have options and a plan B for him on the bench. But getting that early goal, I think, is going to be the most important thing for us. We cannot have to face adversity in this game at home, even though we've done that before and we've been able to overcome it. Even in the United 4-2 game, we scored, we went 2-1 down, but then we found a way to come back and we won 4-2. We beat them in March 2-1. We lost 2-0 in December. We also lost in July. We drew the two previous and lost the one previous to that. So it's so important that we get off to a really good start against them, even though they're lagging right now. So I'll get your 11 at the end. Let's go back, take a step back real quick, because the Aubameyang factor and turning up late for that North London derby, I don't care who you're playing against. If you're captain of the Arsenal, you should never be late for any game, let alone a North London derby, right? He's got his hair cut. He's ready for the game, Luce and Jess. It seems to me like if he's going to show and pay back the Arsenal fans for standing behind him after a hellacious season last season for many reasons. Malaria, his mum wasn't well, but at the same time too, he's still captain. He has to try and rise above some of the challenges that he faces in life. This is the time to do it, isn't it? We want a little bit of this. We want a little bit of that Aubameyang back. Is it possible? What is going to make him tick? Like, everyone keeps saying, don't play him on the left. Yeah, he almost won the Golden Boot playing on the left. I just don't believe like the left versus down the middle. I'll start with you, Jess. How are we going to get the best out of him in this game? Because clearly he's going to start.
Play Odegaard, ESR, and Saka in behind. I feel like that's when he plays the best. He needs basically 3 10s in behind him, supplying him with the ball. My issue with him off of the left is that sometimes in games it makes it really easy for the team to isolate him off of the left and push him towards the sideline. Once he's there, he's pretty much useless to us. So I think it's that, but ultimately, like, we need to get him in better positions in the box and keep him out of build-up play. Another way that you keep him out of build-up play is have an additional 10 out there. When you don't have that and you have Pepe and Aubameyang, inevitably one of them has to drop deep, collect the ball, and neither of them are technically secure enough to do it. Neither of them are good passers either. So I think the more technical security you have in behind him, you allow him to just do his job and get in the box. It's a tough one because I also think Tierney needs to work on his crossing. I think you have to adjust to Aubameyang being the guy running into the box. Don't kick it to his head. Do a cutback to his foot, and let him tap it in. But we need to create chances for him. And another way to do that is to make sure you have Thomas Partey out there on the pitch dictating play. He's our best midfielder in terms of speeding up play and finding gaps and passing in between the lines. So it's getting that starting lineup right, making sure that he has those 10s in behind him so that he doesn't have to be a part of build-up play. And when you get into the box, give him a tap in, like give him a ball that he can handle. Don't kick it to the guy's head. He's not that guy, but yeah. I would like to see Aubameyang, the old Aubameyang, back. He had a little bit of form last season, but he lost it after he got dropped for the North London derby. So I'm hoping being at home and all of that will help him like get it together. But, I'm also on the we need a new striker train as well. I don't think we're ever going to get that Aubameyang back. I think we're going to struggle to score goals this season, period. But that's what I would do.
I agree. I mean, we were talking about how we needed a striker and everyone was kind of laughing when we said, well, I'll take Tammy Abraham,
Tammy Abraham, Gabriel Jesus, I would take him too.
Lukaku, I would have taken all of them. Jesus, I know you were on that train, Jess. I would love to have seen a Marcus Thuram come to the Arsenal. None of those things happening. And I think the key thing too, is it not? The key thing is if Tierney's going to cross the ball loose, it's got to go to his feet, as Jess said, not his head. Pass. We're just not. I think Gabriel is probably the only player from a set piece that could probably, score with a header. He just seems to be that type of guy, but it's got to go to his feet. There's no doubt about it if he's going to succeed.
My issue is Aubameyang is never going to be an aerial player. He's never going to be a physical player. He's never going to be the player that's going to go in and win tackles, win challenges, challenge for the ball. He's a tap-in player. So we need to play to that ability and make sure the ball is finding him. It's unfortunate that he hasn't seemed to be making the runs that he was making when he was in top form, but we need to then play to whatever is going on mentally in his head. My issue is, if we could combine Aubameyang and Lacazette into one player, problem solved. Because Aubameyang has the finesse, he has the technique, all of that.
Still need someone to header the ball though, Luce.
All right, give him an extra few inches, then we'll see. But I just think, the way forward is to go on the hunt for someone more physical, someone with a little bit more drive to win the ball. Because Aubameyang mentally, I don't know what has happened to him, but he just does not look the same man. And I don't want to slag him off. We don't know what goes on behind the scenes. Yeah. Obviously, we gave him a lot of condolences for what was going on in his life the past seasons. But at the end of the day, I want my football club to win. And that's, if you're not up to the task, then I feel like it's your duty as morally, you have a tie to the club. Or so he says he has a tie to the club. Then it's time to sort of move on and let us push forward as a football team, not just mollycoddle people as we always seem to do.
Exactly. And he's the captain. He's the highest paid player. He's got to show up. We need him this season. If Aubameyang could score 20 goals again this season, the Arsenal are up there. I'm not saying we're going to finish in the top 4, but we can definitely...
We don't create enough chances for him to get 20 goals.
I know. So how are we get... Okay, so Jess, let's talk about this a little bit too, because I wanted to also just quickly touch on Tomiyasu, but because I wonder what are you expecting from him in this game with his one-on-one battle, which is going to be Son, sorry. I like the Son. And are we going to see him push forward a little bit more than we have done in... Definitely than he did against Burnley. What are your expectations? Because for me, he's the unknown quantity still, but I'm excited by him. And I think he's got a lot of qualities. How do you see him in this game?
Well, in the question about will we see him go forward more, I would say no. Based on everything that I've seen from him, all of his heat maps, he's going to play more like a right-sided center back. And he'll venture forward only when is favorable to us. And with Tierney pretty much always in the attacking third, I see very limited opportunities for him to burst forward, especially because I'd prefer him to stand next to Ben White. I think we need the three of them, Gabriel, White, and Tomiyasu, just managing Harry Kane and Son and whatever they're going to throw at us. So I think he's up to the task in terms of one-on-one defending. I think he's one of the best one-on-one defenders that we have. He's shown that he kind of has that in his locker. That's his thing. But in terms of, is he going to get into the box and do the crossing? And I think we can forget about that. That's just not his bag. You know what I mean? So,
right.
But that's what I see from him. And it's weird because a lot of people are, I think, a little bit disappointed by that, that he's not really a attacking right back. But ultimately, we were frustrated with Bellerin for so long because that's all he did. So I think it's a nice change to see somebody that defends first and attacks second. And when you have Tierney, who's basically a winger, somebody has to stay back and defend, and I think we're better for it.
Yeah. Who do you guys think so far this season, and I don't want to be melodramatic here in any way, shape or form.
Do it.
I will then. Who do you think's become our most important player right now? Who's our most important player? Lucy, who for you is that person, that player? Like if you're thinking going into the North London derby tomorrow, and you're like, oh my gosh, please don't. By the way, what is this with having no injuries ahead of a game? What
no,
is
Sophie,
this?
don't
Okay,
jinx it. Somebody will get into the warm up and it'll be like, oh my
training,
gosh.
Yeah, in the warm up, and we'll have like 3 people on the floor rolling around like
I'll
crying.
silence my.
No.
Sorry.
Please.
Do you have a most important player? I'm interested to see what you say. Who you say?
For me, go on, Luce.
Yeah, so it's interesting actually, because I do feel like when Tierney was injured, we really, really missed him. Like we felt it. So I'd like to say him, but at the same time, watching Party play, it's an issue with like inconsistency with me, because the players that really put a shift in, they seem to get injured all the time, so you don't really get to see them.
You're going in the right direction, Luz. You're going in the right direction.
Wait, we're talking about injuries again. Hold on.
I know, sorry, you had injuries in my brain. No, I think, okay, down to everything, Saka. Okay, I think he's creating enough chances to be considered like one of our most creative players. He pushes forward. He always tries to cut back defensively. Like even if he doesn't always make the right decision, like I said, that's inexperience. He puts in a shift every game. You can't fault him for that.
Jess?
Yeah. Well, she picked one of the two. I actually feel like there might be three, but the two most obvious ones are Bukayo Saka and Thomas Partey. Without them, we don't tick. We don't have players that can progress the ball by dribbling and with passing. And I think when you watch Saka play, he just speeds up the play. He helps us get from one phase to the next. And Thomas does the same thing from deep. Without him, our midfield is pedestrian. Without Saka, our offense is pedestrian. And so I think when you have the both of them in there, you have a really good chance of winning. And with one or two of them out, you're pretty much dead in the water. I would say a third option is probably Gabriel, because if we saw from the first couple of games, you play Pablo Marie, you might as well just end the game. That guy, I can't with him. I really can't. But for sure, I think Thomas and Bukayo are, for me, the most important players. Without them, like if you told me that tomorrow we wouldn't have them, I'd be like, well, I'm not watching the game, because there's no way we win that game without them, I don't think.
For me, if I'm doing an at the moment, I think Saka is important to us in every regard. But at the moment, I think, when the Premier League, when you see all of the top sides and their midfields, the engine room, the drivers, whether you're protecting the back line or you're helping the ball move forward, Thomas Partey is so important. When you see what he does, and he does small things, because we can't do the small things well, when Thomas Partey just does the small things, it makes you think you're watching like, an Iniesta or a Xavi play in our team, because he just, or a Vieira, he just does those things seamlessly. And I think Gabriel eventually will become that guy. I think he's emerging into a very important player, because when you think about not having Gabriel in defense going forward in some of these games, that too is a little bit alarming.
You need your spine,
Kind of what confuses me when people say, oh, we need Xhaka because he's the only one that can sort of control the pace of the game. Because Partey does that so well, and he's such a good holding player in midfield that he does sort of control what's going on around him. He's very calm, he's very composed. So the only reason I would say, like, I just want to see more of him. I want him to not be scared that he's going to get injured every time. Because playing against Wimbledon, I was even like, oh, should we be playing him? Because he's going to get injured. Like, I don't want to feel like that about our players, but we do have such, I'm sorry, I'm going on about injury again, but it's such an issue at our club that it scares me to put in a player like that was so crucial for this game, even when he's doing so well.
That's the issue with the Granit and Thomas thing, is that I think that partnership would work better if Thomas was allowed to be the one dictating play and Xhaka sat and played as a deep lying playmaker, which is what he is. When you have Thomas sitting and Xhaka just basically passing the ball to Tierney, he can do that. Like, Thomas can do that. He can pass the ball to Tierney. He's the better passer of the two. Xhaka is a deep line playmaker. So I think sometimes the roles are reversed, and I feel like we suffer when Granit is doing the dictating and Thomas is doing the sitting. And I feel like some of that just has to do with personalities. I think Xhaka has a very strong, dominant personality, and others just tend to let him do what he wants to do, but to the detriment of what we're trying to do. So yeah, I agree with that. I would prefer Thomas to be kind of like the guy, but at the same time, do I think Sambi, I just feel like I don't want Sambi to have one of those games where he gets swallowed up. I'm scared for that for him because he's so young and like kind of like newish and all of that. I don't want that pressure on him, but I do think he's a star for the future, and I think he could step in for Xhaka like later on in the season. I'm just afraid it's a little bit too early. That's just me being a little bit like, I'm not sure. Some of his positional stuff is not quite there at the moment.
The reason I would pick Sambi over Xhaka is obviously, like you said, they've both got, Partey and Xhaka both have big personalities. I would like Partey to be the guy that's calling the shots. Also, Sambi's got that prerogative. He wants to push forward, and we look a lot more creative with him in that position. Xhaka has back pass disease. He has horseshoe mania. He wants to go back and forward, back and forward. And I feel like in games like this, especially where getting the first goal is so important, I would just rather see them be more ruthless and really go for it and be on attacking mode than sit back and just get sort of torn apart. Do you know what I mean? Through like being slow or. But it's a different play style. It really just depends on what the game plan is, to be honest.
Yeah. The one thing I do want to say about Xhaka is that I know that he has this sideways and backwards narrative around him, but if you do look at his numbers, he is one of the better progressive passers in our team. I think the difference, sometimes he is a little bit risk adverse. I would say the sideways and backwards person is definitely El Neni. The main issue with Xhaka is his lack of agility. That is, for me, his main issue is that he can't move, he can't recover, so that means that Thomas has to sit next to him and we can't be as adventurous. But in terms of passing the ball forward, he does do that a lot for us. It's just he can't dribble, like he can't, and he has to play with his left foot. So he does have limitations, but I think the progressive passing thing, I push back on it a little bit because if you do look at his numbers, he's one of the better progressive passers in the league.
Yeah.
Statistically.
So let's talk a little bit about, we got just 9 or 10 minutes left here. And thanks to everyone for joining us. If you have any questions, throw them up. But I wanted to get this in because you talked about the spine, Jess, and I feel like we have developed a spine that is coming together, and it will continue to come together over the next few months, right? You've got Ramsdale, you've got Ben White, Gabriel, Tomiyasu, Tierney. That's as solid as we've been and hopeful as we've been at the back in a very, very long time. In the middle of the park, we've talked about Sambi, we've talked about Partey, we've got, Ødegaard just ahead. So talk to me about Emil Smith-Rowe and Ødegaard a little bit. And then I want you in the same breath to just tell me, because I think we all know the back line. We've all kind of set our midfield. And then can you see Ødegaard and Emil Smith-Rowe playing together tomorrow? Lucy, I'll start with you first. Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like they're the only way that Aubameyang, because I do feel like that's what's going to happen. We're going to start with Aubameyang. I feel like that's the only way he gets a decent amount of service to look like he's creating the chances that he should be creating. Otherwise, I feel like he looks very anonymous and like he doesn't really serve any purpose. Ødegaard, I love watching him play, and like he does things that you wouldn't even think to even think of, like, and he's still so young and has so much potential. Like, I feel like we forget that because he's playing next to Emmy so much, that we forget that he's like still a very young player too, and he's got a long way to go. But yeah, both of them together, I'd love to see Emil scoring more goals too, because you can see just how much like it drives him on as a player. I just think they work really well next to each other.
Yeah, Emil Smith-Rowe and Saka need to score more. It's not their job, but
it is their job.
It is their job in the regards of they're in the team and we need more goals. Like when Aubameyang's not scoring and wasn't scoring last season, who was scoring? It was Lacazette and Pepe, really. And I think that's a problem for us. We've always been a team over the years where we get goals from everywhere. And we need to really work on that. Jess, can they play together consistently? And if so, how do you set the two of them up?
Yeah, I think so. I feel you need all three of them on the pitch together. You need Saka, Odegaard, and ESR. Right now, you have to have them out there together because we just don't have enough technical quality in other positions. And there are some of our best ball progressors, and we lack that throughout our team. So for me, when you have Odegaard out there, like, I forget what game it was, but we brought in Emile Smith-Rowe after and everything just started to click. That's because you can't have Odegaard just alone trying to be the beacon of creativity, because then you can just shut down Saka really easily. We need multiple people showing their feet, and ESR does that well. I think they play well together. I think the thing is you inevitably want to see Pepe come in because ESR lacks goals and composure in front of goal. And that's something that I'm hoping that comes over time. We don't know if it will. Some players just never really develop their shooting boots, like Iwobi. Like, he was just somebody that just never really had that going for him. So we're hoping that ESR gets it. We hope that Saka gets it. But until they do, we'll continuously want to see Pepe in the team because he is, on paper, more of an attacking threat.
That's why he keeps picking him.
Yeah,
and that's why he keeps picking him, and that's our Achilles heel. And hopefully we can remedy that. Right. It's come to that moment, that time where we have to talk about predictions. I fancied this game all week long. Call me crazy, but I do feel like we're on, as I said at the top of the show, we're progressing, they're regressing. But they have Son, they have Kane, they can score wonder goals in a heartbeat, in a moment. We've got to be on our toes. Our back line, our goalkeeper, across the board. I hope Arteta has this team ready to roll. There were some people in chat that were saying that this game is bigger for Arteta than the Villarreal semi-final. I don't think so, because I'm telling you right now, guys, if he loses this game, he's not going anywhere. Batten down the hatches, put your seatbelt on. The dude is here for a while.
There's no plan B.
We're not firing Arteta if we lose against Tottenham. We may get pissed off, but he will keep his job. So, Luce, what say you about the grand old game tomorrow?
Part of me wants to say it's going to be a sweaty draw, at like 2-2. I just can't call it.
Sweaty draw, I like that.
Yeah, I feel like whoever scores first is probably going to go on to. Okay, 2-2. That's me. I'm not saying any more. 2-2.
All the Ducks, 22. Jess, what do you say?
I mean, at first, I think I predicted this several times. And one time I said 1-0, but then I'm like, no, I know Kane is going to get some sort of weird penalty or something like that. So I'm actually going to go 2-1. I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game because neither team can put the ball in the back of the net. And I think our defense is really, really solid. I think they'll struggle to break us down, but I think we will miss chances like we always do. But somehow we will get 2 goals. I fancy Pepe off the bench coming and scoring a late goal. I think we have enough to nick it. And I would hope that being at home and having a full stadium would work in our favor. So I would say 2-1. I'd be really disappointed if we didn't win. I would. Yeah. Because they're awful.
I would say at this point, the thing that would disappoint me more is if we go out there and don't give them a really hard game. Yeah. That is what would disappoint me.
I think we're going to. I don't think there's any. I don't know why. I've just felt it during the week that we're going to not only give them a game, but we're going to give them the kind of game where we remind them of those games where no one expected us to win. Like do you remember the Mustafi header in the rain? That match at the 4-2, I think that we're going to have one of those games. Now, I said I think 3-1, and I know we haven't been scoring goals, but I feel like tomorrow we're going to. Martinelli could come off the bench and be a super sub. I think we've got more options than we have done in the past. We're playing at home. The crowd, the fans, they've been superb this season, and I think that they are going to... I think they're going to have another role to play. They've got to be loud. They've got to be crazy. that City-Chelsea game today when Chelsea went down 1-0, the Chelsea fans went absolutely nuts and got behind their team. And I'm really proud of our fans so far this season because I think they've done a really good job supporting the team home and away.
You know what, Soph? Just really quick, the last thing I wanted to say was just, I think these players have a different mentality. I've never seen us go away to Burnley and not just completely fall apart and crumble. Exactly. And I know we didn't play great on the ball. I know our passing was absolute crap. But ultimately, like, could you see the Mustafis and the David Luizes and like that group sticking it out the way that we did against Burnley? I don't think so. And I think having this young energy, I think some of these players they're gonna love the fight. I mean, we even saw Gabriel last season. I mean, let's be real, he pocketed Kane. So I think just that youthful energy that will help us because that old man team was not getting it done. They were traumatized.
It's a great point, Jess. And you know what? We saw it against Brentford. We didn't have these plays against Brentford. That was a makeshift team and a team that we were transitioning from. So, yes, Tomiyasu's going to be ready. Gabriel's going to be ready. Ben White is going to be ready. Ramsdale's going to be ready. Partey's going to be ready. Saka's going to be ready. Emil Smith-Rowe. They will be ready. And so will we. And that's where we're going to leave it tonight. Listen, well done. Great show. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. North London Derby Eve show. We hope you've enjoyed it. Get in, Arsenal. We can do this. Only a win counts. Just don't lose or draw. Until then, we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys. Good night.